All right. I believe I'm live and I'm recording. Well, this is great. So in my divine feminine initiation call a few moments ago, we were sharing about what divine feminine leadership is. Okay, cool. I can see the chat. And I figured it would be great to jump in here and talk about that. What is divine feminine leadership? I would love to know in the chat. So if you're watching this later, do hashtag replay and then put in the chat, what does divine feminine leadership even mean? What does it mean to you? What does it sound like it means? A lot of times I forget that I'm kind of a forerunner with consciousness and awakened leadership and relationships and things like that. And so it occurred to me as we're on the call, like, oh, wow, yeah, like we should probably define what divine feminine leadership is and why we would want to be divine feminine leaders. And what does that mean, right? So if you think about masculine leadership or patriarchal leadership, we have a lot of things that are very different than maybe what divine feminine leadership would look like. Not suggesting that we have all our leaders be feminine necessarily. And I think it's important to define. So some of the things that came up for me, and let me know if you're here in the chat, just put a little emoji or say hi. So some of the things that we came up with on our call was, and I can shout out to Soko, came up with this one, leading with your heart and being okay with it. A divine feminine leader is vulnerable. I'll just type that next to that, vulnerable. That means that I, share when I'm all my messiness and not perfectness, right? And then others can be like, oh yeah, that's right. We're all like that. We all have messy days. And so leading with your heart and being vulnerable, being okay with that. The heart is vulnerable, right? We share. I kind of want to add intimate here. Intimate. I didn't have that word there, but I feel like a divine feminine leader is very intimate. Divine feminine leadership is collaborative. It's not competitive. Everyone feels accepted. Interconnectivity in community, right? So the biggest thing, not competitive, collaborative. Divine feminine leadership is true sisterhood, i.e. coming from the same spiritual mother, same spiritual parents, like the oneness of us all, right? And really starting to see the divinity in others. But yeah, true sisterhood is divine feminine embodiment. Living in integrity. Doing what you say you're going to do. And if you can't, letting someone know why you can't. That is living in integrity is divine feminine leadership. Honest, open, and vulnerable communication is how I stay in integrity currently in my closest relationships. Open meaning willing to share, honest and vulnerable. And it's actually more than just being willing to share, because it's sharing when it's not comfortable sometimes to share. Okay, so living in integrity is a divine feminine leader quality. Deep listening, being held in the space. That is divine feminine leadership. Intuitive, right? Follows our inner guidance. Like we follow our inner guidance when we're in divine feminine. We are curious about how others are going to show up in our lives. And this is easier with people that aren't in your core relationships, in your core circle, and still great to do with them. It's easier if they're doing it too. But this is not assuming or putting them in a box, not being too psychologically close to them. So psychologically close is when you hold a picture of the other person in your head based on history and relate from that picture as if that were them now. It's when you feel another's emotions, or when you feel another's emotions and it's difficult to tell whose feelings are whose. That's being too psychologically close. So that kind of goes with this being curious about how people are going to show up. So as consciousness is evolving and we're all changing consciously and consistently, it's very important to not assume that you know how your best friend's going to show up next time you see her, because she might have evolved a lot. And don't put her in that box. So this is our mind. The ego puts the labels and the boxes on things, and our spiritual oneness self, as we are identifying as the divine, there is no labels. There's no boxes. There's only oneness. So being really careful with that and cultivating curiosity with how people are going to show up. Divine feminine leadership, grounded and centered. Yes, I have a definition for centered too. I can share. Where did I put it? Centered, the sense of your own presence. You're in your own energy field or container apart from others. It is when you are distinct and not enmeshed with others. Right. So divine feminine leadership is being grounded and holding your center. It's your inner voice being 10,000 times louder than those outside of you, or at least louder than those outside of you, right? The divine feminine holding your center and coming back to her voice and her guidance and her intuition, right? Loving and caring for the body is divine embodiment of divine feminine. If you love your body and you care for the body, that's divine feminine leadership. It's living holistically, or maybe an ayurvedic lifestyle, some type of lifestyle where you're turning your habits into rituals and nurturing yourself. Okay. Divine feminine leadership is being tapped into ancient womb and moon wisdom. And I believe it's ignited sexual vibrancy, so sexual liberation. Okay, so those are some of the things that came up when we were chatting about what does a divine feminine leader look like? What is divine feminine leadership? So I would love to hear in the comments if you have anything to add to that. We have a bunch of beautiful divine feminine leaders in this group. So if I missed any big ones, please let me know. I usually think of collaborative, grounded, intuitive, and I added a bunch more. But I think it's important, if we're in the divine feminine initiation vortex, if we are igniting, right, we're in this energy of the divine feminine and we're igniting, initiating this within us, stepping into embodied divine feminine leaders. What does that look like? And yeah, so I'd love to put in the chat if you have any definitions to add, please add them in the comments. And also, not the chat, the comments. I am on Zoom, but no one's on Zoom with me. So in the comments, divine feminine leader, anything that I missed on this or anything else you want to add. I think creative. There we go. Creative. Divine feminine leader is very creative. I think that kind of goes with the collaborative and intuitive, but it's separate. It's creative. But yeah, anything like that. Please add that in the comments. And then also let me know, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you feel like you are in this energy? Are you an embodied divine feminine leader? Is there still things that I shared that you're like, ooh, I don't really do that quite yet, or I want to do that, or I would love to know. And then, yeah, we can continue the conversation. I love you all so much. Enjoy being divine feminine, embodied divine feminine lady today, queen, goddess, and I'll see you tomorrow.